Welcome to Module 7. This is the first video lecture for Module 7, and it's letter A in your outline if you're in the learning materials part of Module 7. If you go back to the first part there in Module 7, you'll see the introduction, which has a more detailed outline, and we will be following through that outline. On this video, we have all of letter A, including the 5 subcategories, creation and so forth, that you will see there. So that locates where we are. If you want to take a minute just to go look at the module again or print out the outline, feel free to do so. And you can stop this video anytime you want, and you can go back or look for other materials, which I'll occasionally direct you to. As you can see, the format's a little bit different. The first 6 modules of this series were recorded in a classroom setting, and we had 5 chaplains who met with us, and so there was some give and take. But now the rest of the lectures will come in a format where I am speaking directly to you and you alone. We're in a special studio in the same building in which the earlier videos were taken, and this is a faculty studio in which we can record things just like this. So, my intention for these lectures is not to repeat everything that you will see in the readings. The readings for modules 7 through 10 are all drawn from my book, Meet God Again for the First Time, and they cover in considerable detail the issues that we want to cover in these 4 modules. However, what I will want to do in these videos is, particularly by way of emphasis, oral presentation allows things like tone of voice, gestures like this, and simply the way I'm talking to you and emphasizing certain things. You can be clearer in the oral presentation than you can be in writing, even though it may be harder to remember the details. So the lectures, the readings will work closely together. There'll be a lot of overlap, but in mastering both of those, I think you will have a stronger understanding of the topic than you would with either one alone. So let's begin. We're in Module 7A, and this is the biblical theology portion of the course. We've been talking in general about hermeneutics. We've come to understand what exegesis is, what biblical theology is, what systematic theology is. Module 10 gets more into the area of systematic theology, where we deal with the implications of the biblical material. But in 7 through 9, we're going to walk basically from Genesis to Revelation and take a look how the Bible writers' own intentions, how their own world and worldview was involved in presenting the material that they gave, and how God, through the Holy Spirit, oversaw the entire Scriptures into a seamless whole that has powerful implications for the way we live today. So let's get started. We'll begin at the beginning. And the first portion of letter A is the creation story. And you will want to take a look at chapter 2 in the book Meet God Again and refer to it from time to time. If you have been checking in the website, the Learning Materials website, this is my printout of the first page of chapter 2 that you have available to you there under 7A. And we'll be following pretty much along that line. Now, as you read the creation story, you come to realize that the whole thing in chapter 1 of Genesis is building up to a climax. And the climax is the creation of humanity. While animals are important to God, while the natural world is very important to God, it is with human beings that He is communicating in the book of Genesis. And so human beings are the high point of the creation story. Adam and Eve, the high point of the creation story. Then in chapter 2, there's a second story of creation, and that one focuses simply on the relation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So it elaborates on the story in chapter 1. The high point is in chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. And I'd like to invite you to turn to a Bible, pause the video if you need to do that, and get a Bible and follow with me as best that you can. Verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock and over all the earth." Now there's a couple of relationships here you want to notice. First of all, human beings are created in the image of God. Since they're created in the image of God, that means that they are intentionally related to God. God is like a mentor. Human beings are like disciples. And there is a natural relationship that was intended from the beginning. At the same time, there's a second relationship mentioned in this text, and that relationship is the human beings also relate to the earth. So they have dominion over the earth. They are to rule over the earth. And so human beings are also created with a natural relationship to the earth, to the environment. In this case, the roles are reversed. It is human beings who are in the mentor role, and it is the creation that is in the disciple role. So human beings are designed to relate to God in the same way that the environment relates to human beings. Human beings are to see God's mentoring of them as the model for their stewardship over the creation. So in this very first verse here, verse 26 of chapter 1, we see the establishment of relationships as very central to the creation account. Verse 27, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." This verse repeats the concept that human beings are in the image of God, in God's likeness, that there's a natural relationship between human beings and God, but then it adds an additional dimension. Male and female, he created them. The image of God is not just male. The image of God is male and female. That it is in both, in relation to each other, that the fullness of the image of God is exhibited. So there's a natural relationship also between human beings and each other. Human beings alone are not complete. Human beings are complete only in community. That's a very important concept that we come to understand here as we look at Genesis 1, verses 26 and 27. Let's take a look at verse 28, just to complete the passage. "God blessed them, male and female, and said to them, 'Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground.'" So human beings were designed in this mentoring, ruling relationship over the creation. They were designed to work with the creation, to work with the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the animals that move along the ground. The entire creation is subject to them. Now, if you go to your handout and you go to page 17, you will see an illustration there that may be helpful to you. And I'm holding up the page. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's what your page will look like, page 17. And you will notice that there's an illustration on the upper right-hand part. And it's an illustration with a number of arrows. So you have an upward arrow. The X in the middle would be Adam and Eve. You have an upward arrow pointing to God. That represents the relationship of subordination that human beings have to God. You have sideward arrows between the Adam and Eve and others, the way it's set up here. This is natural relationship, and it's a relationship of equality. And then you have the relationship downward to the earth. So you have all three of those relationships illustrated there. And take a look at that illustration, because I think it'll be helpful to you in grasping what Genesis 1:26 to 28 are all about. So how does this creation story function in the whole Pentateuch? The Pentateuch is the first 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Why is the creation story the starting point? Why is it there right at the beginning? 2 things. First of all, it indicates that all nations have the same God. You see, every other nation at this time had gods of its own. People didn't think in terms of a universal God back then, but rather you had the gods of Egypt, the gods of Babylon, the gods of the Hittites, etc., the gods of the Canaanites. But Israel's story is different. The Creator in Israel's context is Israel's God. And all nations are subject to that same God. All nations come from Adam and Eve. So this story doesn't favor one nation over another. Israel is not to be seen as uniquely human in some way, but rather God is the God of all nations, of all peoples, and all ethnic groups are related to one another. So there's a powerful lesson there about equality, equality of all different ethnic groups, all different races, equality of opportunity in God's intention. Israel then would have to be understood in the Bible as a missionary nation right from the start. Their role and their mission is to speak for God to the other nations that may seem to be a bit more distant from Him in the context we're talking about. A second point is that the creation story is the starting point of the covenant. That throughout the Bible, and we will go into this in much more detail, but throughout the Bible there's a strong sense that God is a God of covenant. He's a God that has rules and regulations. There are ways to behave in relation to God, and we will talk a lot more about that, particularly in module number 9. However, the main point of all this is, why are there rules and regulations? Why are there laws? And the underlying principle is that laws are grounded in relationship. Whenever people are in relationship to each other, particularly in a sinful world, there needs to be rules so that people know how to relate to each other. There's rules also for how people are to relate to God. And the purpose of the covenant is not oppressive. The purpose of the covenant is to clarify the boundaries, to provide security. Here's how people are going to behave. Here's how God is going to behave. Here's how He expects us to behave in relation to Him. When we do, things go well. When we don't, things don't go so well. So the purpose of law is not to be oppressive, but is to regulate relationships so that people can be secure in those relationships. Obviously, a couple that's gone to all the trouble of getting married is probably less likely to just walk away the next day than a couple that's simply living together. There's a covenant, there's a commitment to stay together through difficult times. That provides security in a relationship, and that ultimately is the purpose of law. So, you have in this story the fact that God has created the human race. They are the founders of all the nations. Israel, in the end, will represent God to these other nations, but they're all subject to the same God. And God is also the God of law, the God of covenant. And while those words are not mentioned in Genesis 1 and 2, they are nevertheless implied by the reality of relationships.